Before we start the video, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Also, turn on the notification bell so you can get all our latest updates. And if you haven't heard the recap for the previous season of this show, head over to our channel and check it out. Or you can find the link in the first comment and in the description below. The last thing we saw in the previous season was that Huey managed to rescue Frenchie, and Kimiko from Vought's men, with Starlight also showing up to help them escape. A-Train tried to fight Starlight, but couldn't go through with it because he suddenly had a heart attack due to his addiction to Compound V, as we already know. Meanwhile, Butcher kidnapped Madeline and brought Homelander, threatening to kill her or force him to admit he killed Butcher's wife, Becca. But Homelander didn't care about Butcher's words. He killed Madeline himself because he'd discovered Becca and his son were actually alive and that Madeline had been hiding them from him, so he finished her off. At that moment, Butcher had no choice but to blow up the place. But Homelander saved him and took him to where Becca, Butcher's wife, and her son, who is Homelander's child and has superpowers, were staying. Alright, all good so far. The new season kicks off with Mr. Stan Edgar, the owner of Vought, who's now in charge of everything in Madeline's place, given that she's dead. We see Edgar meeting with military generals to finalize the deal that officially brings the Seven into the national defense. The agreement goes through, so Homelander and the rest of the Seven are formally working with the military now. They start going on missions right away. For instance, we see Black Noir tracking down that super terrorist named Captain and wiping out him and his entire group with ease, then leaving. A bit later, Homelander and Starlight hold a memorial for Translucent, finally admitting publicly that he died. Of course, they don't tell the real story of his death. They claim he was killed by a super terrorist called LW, who's supposedly part of a Mexican cartel. They're pushing this story so people will be even more scared of these super terrorists, which in turn makes everyone cling tighter to the Seven's involvement in the military to keep America safe. No one realizes that Vought itself is behind creating these super terrorists in the first place. After that memorial, Homelander goes to see Ashley in Madeline's office. She's grateful to him because, thanks to Homelander, she's been appointed as the new director in Madeline's place. She tells Homelander she's found a new hero to bring onto the Seven, since they're missing two members, Translucent and the Deep. Homelander agrees and goes with her to check out the hero she's found. He's blind but has extraordinary hearing, using it to fight with a lot of skill. Homelander isn't impressed. He hits him hard on the ears and completely ruins them, basically telling Ashley he's worthless now, then scolds her for recruiting someone on her own initiative. He warns her to do what he says and not to act like she's in charge, or she'll regret it. Terrified, Ashley just agrees and stays quiet. After that, Homelander meets up with Maeve so they can film some PR piece promoting the Seven's partnership with the military. While filming, a new hero named Stormfront appears to introduce herself. She tells them she's joined the Seven because Stan Edgar personally recruited her. Homelander gets mad and goes to Edgar, demanding to know how he could bring Stormfront on board without asking him first. He even threatens to quit the company, but Edgar doesn't care. He tells Homelander he'll hire whoever he wants without clearing it with anyone. He even threatens Homelander for talking back, making it clear he's not someone to mess with. Meanwhile, Huey, Frenchie, and Kimiko are all hiding out in some warehouse owned by a gang that's friendly with Frenchie. They've holed up there so nobody can find them, since they're wanted. Huey leaves them briefly to go meet with Starlight. At the moment, Huey is sneaking around to see Starlight from time to time. He hands her a photo of a guy named Gecko, who supposedly works in Vought's labs. They think he can steal a sample of Compound V for them so they can expose the company. Indeed, Starlight goes to Gecko and pressures him, and he eventually agrees to steal some Compound V for her. She leaves, feeling pleased. As for Huey, he returns to Frenchie, and Kimiko at the gang's spot. They happen to see a news report on TV about Butcher, announcing that he blew up Madeline and killed her. He's now on the run with a warrant out for his arrest, along with Huey, Frenchie, and Kimiko. They're all losing their minds over this news, especially because they haven't heard from Butcher. They don't actually know if he killed Madeline or not. They're terrified and just want to run. Huey suggests they stay and keep pushing to expose Vought, but they won't hear of it, afraid things will only get worse. We also realize from the conversation that Huey's been working secretly with Starlight without telling them. A few hours later, Frenchie's gang buddies show up at the warehouse. one of them badly wounded. Frenchie learns they were injured while smuggling people into the US. No one understands what's going on until they see surveillance footage showing these gang members sneaking super terrorists into the country. The injury was caused when one of those super terrorists attacked them after arriving in the US and then escaped. Someone told them to smuggle these terrorists in, but they have no idea who. Probably they never even saw the person. Everyone assumes it must be Vought, since increasing the number of super terrorists would force the military to rely on the Seven even more. At this point, Huey's had enough. He begs everyone to help him keep fighting Vought, revealing he's been getting help from Starlight too. That annoys them, particularly MM, who warns him to stay away from Starlight because Vought is probably keeping tabs on her, which would lead them straight to Huey. Huey agrees and suggests they go to the CIA. Everyone agrees, so they meet with their contact Susan, the CIA agent, and tell her all they've discovered about the super terrorists being smuggled into America. Susan thinks it over, about to share something important, when suddenly her head explodes. Nobody understands what just happened. Terrified, they run away. They return to the warehouse, where Butcher shows up, summoned by Frenchie for help. From that moment on, Butcher rejoins the team to help them survive this mess, even though Huey hates that he's back after ditching them before. On the other side, we see the Deep living a miserable life ever since he left the Seven, constantly causing trouble in the little town he's been staying in. He messes up again today and ends up in jail. A local hero named Eagle bails him out and takes him to his home. There, a strange woman named Carol is waiting, and the Deep really doesn't like her vibe. He's ready to leave. But Carol promises she can help him get back into the Seven, so the Deep is intrigued and decides to listen to what she has to say. Carol starts giving the Deep some kind of therapy sessions, but none of it seems to make a difference for him. Eagle comes over and gives the Deep a drink that's secretly drugged, then locks him in a room. After drinking it, the Deep hallucinates, imagining the gills on his body are talking to him, because he has these fish-like gills. At first, he's terrified, but eventually he starts communicating with his gills. Through that, he begins accepting himself again, and his self-confidence gradually returns. We'll see where that leads next. Back to Homelander. He's now at Becca's place, hanging out with his son Ryan. Becca isn't pleased at all about this. She takes Ryan away from him to a lesson he has, leaving Homelander behind. Then she goes to a Vought-owned facility where she talks to Dr. Park, the doctor who runs the place she and Ryan live in. She begs him to move them somewhere. Homelander won't find them because she doesn't want Homelander visiting her and Ryan all the time. Dr. Park says he can't do anything. Homelander already knows about his son's existence. Becca storms off, upset, and goes home with Ryan. Homelander spends some more time with Ryan, then eventually heads out. As he leaves, Becca pleads with him not to come back, but he refuses. He reveals he knows she called Dr. Park, warning her not to try something like that again because she can never truly hide from him. Then he leaves. Meanwhile, Starlight and Stormfront appear on a TV show to give Stormfront more publicity and hype. From their conversation, Starlight realizes Stormfront is different from the others. She seems genuinely hard for the company to control. But that's not the big concern right now. The important twist is that A-Train unexpectedly shows up, fresh out of the hospital. Starlight is shocked to see him, but she plays it cool and greets him politely on camera. After the segment, she pulls him aside. We learn that Starlight publicly claimed she saved A-Train's life when he had a heart attack, leaving out the part where he was actually fighting her to stop Huey and the others from escaping. Because of that, A-Train tries threatening her with the real story, but Starlight doesn't care and walks off to meet Gecko and pick up the stolen sample of Compound V. A-Train suddenly appears. He's been following her. He accuses her of hiding something. She ignores him and heads home. He even follows her there, manages to grab the vial, and threatens to bring it to Homelander so she'll be exposed. Starlight reminds him she knows he killed his ex-girlfriend Popclaw. If he rats her out, she'll publicly destroy him. Frightened, A-Train hands the vial back and leaves. Meanwhile, Butcher is by himself, lost in thought about the past. We flash back to right after Homelander took him to see Becca, letting him realize she was alive. Butcher barely got a chance to speak to her before passing out again, and then woke up dumped on some random street. He figures Homelander did that on purpose, giving him a glimpse of Becca to rub it in, then tossing him aside to humiliate him even more. But Butcher wasn't deterred. He went straight to a nearby diner, wrote down everything he could remember about the house he saw, trying to figure out where it might be. And that's all that happened with Butcher until he came back. Now, in the present, Butcher meets with Mallory. He asks for her help to locate the super terrorist who made his way to America. She tells him where the guy might be hiding and wants Butcher to bring him in. In return, she'll clear the charges against him and his friends, and she'll also help him find his wife Becca. Butcher's thrilled. He goes to Huey and the rest to announce he knows where the super terrorist is, then takes them all with him to find the guy. So Butcher, Huey, Frenchie, and Kimiko head to some shop where the terrorist is supposedly hiding. They go inside, searching around until Kimiko spots a security guard. She recognizes him, apparently hates him, and kills him gruesomely. Frenchie comes over, sees the terrorist group's symbol on the dead guy, the same group that kidnapped Kimiko and her brother years ago. That explains her rage. After a bit more searching, Kimiko finds the super terrorist. But surprisingly, she hugs him, and we realize this super terrorist is actually her brother. Butcher tries to shoot him, but Huey smacks his arm so the shot goes astray. Kimiko's brother gets angry, uses his telekinetic powers to collapse the whole place on top of Butcher and the others, then escapes with Kimiko. Butcher gets up, furious at Huey for interfering. He demands everyone come with him to hunt down Kimiko's brother. They refuse, arguing that Kimiko is their friend. Butcher finally spills the truth, that Becca is alive, and explains what happened between him and Homelander. He needs the super terrorist in order to get to Becca. Hearing his story, they feel for him, so they leave to search for Kimiko and her brother. Meanwhile, Kimiko and her brother talk. He says he came to America to get revenge on all these heroes, especially Homelander, for killing their village and family long ago. Kimiko disagrees. She says it was their kidnappers who killed their family, not Homelander, and begs him to forget vengeance so they can run away and live in peace somewhere else. Her brother rejects that, fights her, and tries to run, but she catches up, overpowers him, and pins him down. Butcher and the others show up right then and manage to capture her brother, along with Kimiko. The next day, Butcher and the crew are on a boat in open water so nobody can catch them. Butcher calls Mallory, telling her he has the super terrorist in custody. She's thrilled and says her officers will come get him. She asks him about Kimiko, since she's the terrorist's sister. What's he going to do with her? He casually says if she tries anything, he'll take her out, then hangs up. He turns around to find Frenchie and Kimiko heard every word. They don't say a thing, but the look on their faces says they can't stand him. Elsewhere, A-Train is chilling in some casino. He finishes up and heads to work, but suddenly feels ill from his heart speeding up. Ever since he recovered, his heart has been messed up because of Compound V. He pulls it together and goes to the Seven's HQ to meet with Starlight and the rest, plus Ashley and a director. They're pitching a new ad concept or something. Suddenly, Ashley gets a text, freaks out, and leaves the meeting to talk to Stan Edgar. We learn from their conversation that someone just leaked info about Compound V to the media, causing a massive uproar. Ashley asks Edgar what to do, and he tells her to do nothing, not even mention it to anyone, not even Homelander, until he gives the go-ahead. She agrees and leaves. Starlight returns home and sees the news, realizing the leaked Compound V story has gone public. She's excited because she was the one who leaked it, using that stolen vial to expose the company. Then A-Train shows up, accusing her of being behind it and telling her she'll destroy the company and everyone's livelihood. Starlight doesn't care, keeps denying it, and he leaves. Meanwhile, Homelander is still at Becca's place with Ryan. After breakfast, he takes Ryan up onto the roof, ordering him to jump and fly, since Ryan supposedly inherited his superpowers. Ryan is terrified and refuses, so the deranged Homelander shoves him off the roof. Ryan hits the ground hard, not breathing. Becca rushes out, on the verge of losing her mind. Suddenly, Ryan recovers because he really does have powers like Homelander. He freaks out on Homelander, shoving him away, and his laser eyes flare up just like Homelander's, though he doesn't actually harm him, just demands he stay away. Feeling guilty for messing up, Homelander leaves and goes back to Vought. There, Maeve tells him about the Compound V leak that's taken over the news. He's furious they kept him in the dark, but for now he doesn't do anything except hold a meeting with the Seven. Stan Edgar shows up to address them about the leak, saying he doesn't know who did it, but plans to find out. He wants them to track down the super terrorist, so people will focus on that instead of the scandal. They all agree, but Homelander makes a point of humiliating Edgar in front of everyone, letting him know he's angry about being left out of the loop. He says they'll do the job, but only for their own image, not for Edgar's sake. Then they head off to prepare. Back with Butcher and the gang on their boat, a police helicopter shows up wanting to arrest them, not because of the super terrorist, but because they basically stole the boat. Before the cops can do anything, Kimiko's brother breaks free and uses his powers to destroy the chopper. Everyone's shocked, but quickly speed off. Unfortunately, they don't get far before a bunch of sharks start chasing them. Someone is controlling them. They don't have to guess too long. Suddenly, the Deep appears riding on a massive whale. He's here to capture them in hopes of getting back into the Seven. He tries to block their path with the whale, but Butcher doesn't slow down. He rams the whale full speed, sending the Deep flying. Butcher and the others literally crash right into the whale, ending up covered in blood and guts. They get off the boat and hide in some nearby tunnels. But things get worse when Homelander and the Seven arrive soon after. They see the Deep, who explains he was trying to help out. Starlight is furious to see the Deep after what he once did to her and basically rips into him. But Homelander cuts everyone short and tells them to head into the tunnels to find the terrorist, but not to kill him. He wants to do the honors himself. Everyone nods and goes in. Homelander then tells the Deep he'll bring him back to the team soon, then joins the search. Starlight eventually finds Huey. Before she can talk to him, she senses Homelander is right behind her, so she blasts Huey with her powers, knocking him down. Homelander shows up and realizes Starlight didn't want to kill him, so he demands she finish Huey off or else he'll kill them both. She's devastated and moves to kill Huey. At the last second, Butcher and the others appear, and Kimiko's brother uses his power to collapse the ground beneath Homelander, buying them time. He and Kimiko take off, with the rest escaping too. But soon, Stormfront spots them. That's where we see her dark and brutal side. She relentlessly hunts Kimiko and her brother, destroying buildings and killing civilians without a care in the world. She's insanely strong, her power like controlled lightning bolts, burning everything in her path. After a wild chase, she corners Kimiko, ready to kill her. Kimiko's brother intervenes, pushing Kimiko away from Stormfront, but he can't get out himself. Stormfront catches him, breaks his arm, and kills him in cold blood right in front of Kimiko, who's helpless to stop it. Homelander arrives just as Stormfront finishes him off. Enraged, she didn't leave him alive for him, but Stormfront couldn't care less. She mocks Homelander and strolls off. Later, we see Homelander and the Seven at some local shelter, helping people whose buildings were wrecked in the chaos. But the real focus is on Edgar, who holds a press conference with Stormfront at his side, praising her for stopping the terrorist. Naturally, he doesn't mention her rampage or the innocent people she killed. Stormfront goes up to speak, hyping herself as a hero, while Homelander quietly fumes. He's realizing the public might love Stormfront more than him, and it's driving him crazy. Butcher, Kimiko, and the rest watch this news coverage too, and Kimiko is seething with rage at Stormfront for murdering her brother. It's clear she won't let that slide. The next day, Butcher goes to meet Mallory again. She tells him she's found Becca's location, gives him the address, and urges him to grab her and flee somewhere safe. She also hands him a file about an old hero called Liberty. Mallory says Liberty was active in the 70s, and no one knows what happened to her, but clearly, she's important. Before Susan was killed, she'd been gathering key intel on Liberty that might bring down Vought. Butcher leaves, meets up with MM, and reveals he found Becca's compound, which is heavily secured by Vought. He plans to rescue her and get away from all this. He gives MM the Liberty file, telling him if he still wants to continue their mission against Vought, he should look into it. Then Butcher heads out. Butcher arrives at Becca's gated community and meets her. She's overjoyed to see him, promising she'll escape with him tomorrow, bringing Ryan as well. So Butcher waits all night for her in a spot inside the compound. Come morning, Becca shows up, but without Ryan. She tells Butcher she can't run off with him because he'd end up hating Ryan. He's not Butcher's kid, but Homelander's. She can't handle the thought of Butcher resenting Ryan and possibly hurting him. Butcher pleads with her, but she refuses and leaves in tears, devastated. Butcher is crushed too, realizing he can't be with her after all. Elsewhere, Homelander goes to Vought's building and bumps into Starlight in the elevator. He stops it, chokes her, and threatens that if she ever disobeys him again like she did by not killing Huey, he'll kill her. Then he lets her go. Homelander next talks to A-Train, saying he's heard rumors about A-Train's failing health, that his heart is too weak from all the whelp. Compound V, Homelander declares A-Train is out of the team. A-Train is shocked but has nothing to say, so he leaves. A bit later, Homelander is alone, watching Stormfront's recent TV interviews in which she insults him and the rest of the Seven, belittling them so she can become more famous. This strategy is working. The public is mocking Homelander and cheering for Stormfront. Frustrated, Homelander confronts her, threatening that if she keeps pulling these stunts, he'll make her pay because he's still the leader of the Seven. He leaves in a rage. Meanwhile, Huey, and Starlight team up to investigate that old hero Liberty in hopes of finding whatever crucial info Susan was onto. From the file, they track down a woman named Hunter, who Susan had planned to visit to learn more about Liberty. They go see Hunter, who refuses to talk at first, but insists. She finally agrees, telling them that back in the 70s when she was a child, Liberty randomly stopped her and her brother on the road and killed her brother in cold blood just because he was black. It was a blatant act of racism and brutality. They're all shocked. They wonder how that helps them, since Liberty seems to have disappeared or died. But Hunter stuns them by revealing that Liberty is very much alive. She shows them a photo of Stormfront, explaining that's Liberty. Everyone is floored. They leave, discussing how Liberty is Stormfront, and for some reason, she hasn't aged a day. They figure out Susan probably uncovered these facts about Stormfront, and that's why she was killed, likely by Stormfront herself. So they decide they need to focus on exposing her, proving to everyone that most of these heroes are criminals who don't really save people the way they claim. Talking about crime, let's check in on Homelander, who's on the set of a new movie about himself and the rest of the Seven. Everyone's there. Maeve, Starlight, Stormfront, the whole team. In the middle of filming, Ashley shows up, clearly panicked, and shows Homelander a leaked video. It shows him fighting a super terrorist and killing him, but the problem is, he also kills a random civilian in the process and doesn't even care. He just leaves. That video is now everywhere online. Because of it, a congresswoman named Victoria Newman is staging protests at Vought headquarters, demanding Homelander be put on trial. Naturally, Homelander loses it. He wraps up his scenes for the film, then heads over to these protests, hoping to shut them down. He tries talking to the crowd, but nobody listens, and he actually imagines himself massacring everyone out of rage. He holds back though and leaves. Meanwhile, Starlight is still on the movie set when she suddenly sees her mom chatting with Stormfront. This throws her into a fury. She confronts her mom, asking what on earth she's doing there. Her mom says she just wanted to make amends, since Starlight's been angry with her ever since learning she agreed to let Vought inject her with Compound V when she was little, so she'd become a superhero. Her mom pleads with her to reconcile, but Starlight wants no part of it. Stormfront tries playing peacemaker between them. During that conversation, Stormfront casually mentions she knows Starlight was the one who leaked Compound V to the media. Starlight plays dumb and denies any involvement, so Stormfront lets it go and leaves. After that, Homelander goes to Stormfront, asking for her help in repairing his public image. She agrees, telling him she has a literal army of online supporters who can boost his reputation. Homelander is thrilled and thanks her. Later that night, Starlight meets with Stormfront and tells her outright, "I know your Liberty." She warns that if Stormfront ever tries exposing Starlight for leaking Compound V, Starlight will publicly reveal her true identity as Liberty. Stormfront backs down. Just then, Homelander shows up and Starlight heads out. Homelander thanks Stormfront for her plan working so well, and from that moment, the two start getting closer, falling for each other in their own twisted way. Who knows what these two maniacs will do next? On another note, we see Maeve approaching the Deep, saying she can help him get back into the Seven if he'll do her a little favor that has to do with Homelander. Maeve wants to get rid of Homelander because he's threatening to kill someone close to her, apparently someone Maeve really cares about. The Deep agrees. Meanwhile, Butcher is in a dark place ever since Becca chose not to leave with him. He spends all his time drinking. His anger issues have gotten worse. 2. We see him in a random casino picking a fight for no reason, then getting swarmed and thrown out. He gets a call from Huey, who tells him Stormfront is actually Liberty and asks for his help exposing her. But Butcher couldn't care less. He tells Huey he's done with all of this and plans to leave the US altogether, then hangs up. In reality, Butcher isn't going anywhere. He goes to see his Aunt Judy to make sure she's okay and check on his dog, which she's been taking care of. At the same time, Huey talks to about Butcher's decision, and gets angry. He wants to find out why Butcher's suddenly bailing. He knows Butcher well, and he suspects he went to Judy's place, so he and Huey drive over there. Butcher's not exactly thrilled to see them, telling them to leave, and walks out. But right before he goes anywhere, Butcher spots Black Noir lurking around. He realizes Noir is there to kill him because he learned about Becca, something Vought doesn't want out in the open. Butcher heads back inside to MM and Huey, filling them in on Black Noir's arrival. He also finally explains how Becca chose to stay behind, which gutted him. That's why he's in such a foul mood and was planning to run. His friends sympathize with him and decide to help him deal with Noir. They stay with him until night falls, when Black Noir finally makes his move, bursting in to finish Butcher off. They fight, but Noir is too strong and pins Butcher, about to kill him. In a last-ditch move, Butcher reveals he has evidence that Homelander has a son from a woman he assaulted, and that Vought covered it up. If anything happens to Butcher, he'll leak it all. We find out Stan Edgar's been watching through Noir's feed. He freaks out when Butcher threatens to expose them, calls Butcher, and agrees to call Noir off in exchange for Butcher keeping his mouth shut about Becca, Ryan, and the rest of it. Butcher accepts, and Noir backs down. Butcher then says his goodbyes to his aunt and leaves with MM and Huey, returning to the group. Speaking of the group, let's talk about Kimiko. Ever since her brother died, she's been spiraling, disappearing on her own every day. Frenchie's worried, so he follows her. He sees her enter some shop, where she brutally kills 3 men inside. Frenchie is horrified, but keeps trailing her. She then goes into a church building and picks up money from someone Frenchie recognizes, a partner from his past. Frenchie realizes Kimiko has started working as a hired killer. He tries to snap her out of it, telling her it's wrong, but she doesn't care. Furious, Frenchie leaves. The next day, Starlight meets up with Huey and Frenchie. First things first, Frenchie removes a tracking device Vought had implanted in her so they can't track her location anymore. Then Starlight sits down with Huey, Frenchie, Butcher, MM, and Kimiko, announcing she has crucial info. She's hacked into Stormfront's computer and discovered references to some psychiatric facility Stormfront keeps talking to Edgar about. Something shady is going on there. They decide to head over to check it out. MM, Kimiko, and Frenchie sneak inside, while Butcher, Huey, and Starlight stay outside. Once inside, MM and the others head to the security room, take out the guards, and start scanning the surveillance feeds. They see multiple patients in their rooms, each with a superpower of some kind. It looks like Vought is experimenting on adults with Compound V, maybe trying to create more super terrorists or develop new drugs. Before long, Stormfront arrives at the facility with a nurse named Lamplighter, a former member of the Seven. She tests one patient's abilities, and when he demands a visit with his sister, Stormfront orders Lamplighter to kill him. He tortures the patient with his flame powers, disintegrating him. MM and Frenchie recognize Lamplighter immediately. He's the same guy who used to be in the Seven and once destroyed Mallory's grandchildren in a fire. Shaken, they gather as much data as they can off the server. They're about to leave when Lamplighter spots Frenchie and starts hurling fire at him. Kimiko knocks him aside, so the fire misses Frenchie, but it hits a nearby door, releasing another powered patient, Cindy. She's extremely dangerous. She can literally explode people with a flick of her hand. She's so enraged, she almost kills Lamplighter, but a guard opens fire on her, so she blasts the guard's head instead. Taking advantage of the chaos, our group escapes into another room with Lamplighter. Meanwhile, Cindy is opening every door in the facility, letting patients run wild. Lamplighter wants to kill MM and the others, but just as he's about to flame them, one of the escaped patients attacks him. Kimiko kills that patient, saving Lamplighter. Realizing they're all stuck in this mess together, Lamplighter agrees to lay off, and they plan to escape. They need to wait for the wild patients to scatter. During this downtime, Frenchie rages at Lamplighter, reminding him about how he murdered Mallory's grandkids and how that triggered Mallory's crusade against the Seven. Lamplighter used to be presumed dead, but apparently Vought pulled him back in to oversee this facility. Lamplighter insists he never meant to kill those kids. He thought he was torching Mallory herself. Genuinely remorseful, he says he wasn't aiming to murder children. The group grudgingly believes him, seeing how upset he is. Meanwhile, outside the facility, Butcher, Huey, and Starlight end up in a confrontation with one of the escaped patients, who uses his power to flip their car. Butcher manages to take him down, but Huey is seriously injured and goes into a coma-like state. They rush him to a hospital where doctors say he'll recover, but it's critical for now. Back inside, MM and friends finally make their move. As soon as they step out, they run into Cindy again. They sprint away, but she almost catches them. Stormfront suddenly arrives and blasts Cindy, knocking her out cold. Lamplighter slips away to talk to Stormfront alone. He tells her an escaped patient caused all the damage. He conveniently leaves out the part about MM and the others. She believes him and tells him to clean it up. Later, Lamplighter goes with Frenchie and the crew to meet Mallory. The moment she sees him, she goes berserk, ready to kill him on the spot. But he explains it was never his plan to harm her grandchildren, and he's regretted it every day since. Mallory sees his genuine remorse and decides not to shoot him. Meanwhile, Stormfront returns to Homelander. Now that they're an item, she decides to reveal her full past to him. She was born in 1919 in Germany. During World War II, Dr. Frederick Vogt tried to create a super soldier serum, but failed multiple times until he invented Compound V. She was the first person to receive it successfully, gaining superpowers. She and Frederick fell in love, got married, and then came to America to build Vought from the ground up. Ever since, they've been continuing the plan of creating more soups. Homelander is shocked, but also feels closer to Stormfront because she's trusted him with her real story. Elsewhere, Maeve meets with the Deep, who brings her a camera he found under the sea. This is what she asked him to get. She thanks him and tells him to keep it a secret. On his way out, the Deep bumps into A-Train, says he knows A-Train's about to get booted from the Seven, and invites him to come see this church group if he wants back in. A-Train agrees and follows him. The Deep takes him to a man named Alistair, the leader of that church that's helping the Deep and others. Alistair promises to get them both back into the Seven. We don't yet know how. We cut to Maeve again, now sitting at home with her girlfriend Elena, the same one Homelander wants to eliminate. Elena accidentally spots the camera footage on Maeve's phone. It's from Flight 37, the plane crash in which Homelander and Maeve chose not to save anyone. Elena is horrified by what she sees. Maeve says it wasn't her fault. Homelander insisted on leaving those people to die. She plans to use the video against him, threatening to release it if he ever tries to kill Elena or Maeve. Elena is shell-shocked but stays quiet. Now we jump over to a random ordinary citizen who's been bombarded by news from Vought about super terrorists. This constant fear-mongering makes him snap. One day, he shoots and kills a supermarket clerk just because he suspects the guy might be a super terrorist. A few days after that incident, Congresswoman Victoria Newman is talking with Lamplighter, who has decided to testify against Vought, supporting Mallory and her team. Lamplighter admits he spent years running that psychiatric facility, where the goal was to inject adults with Compound V to give them strong powers, like they do with kids. He doesn't know exactly why Vought wants grown-ups to have superpowers, but they're clearly determined to make it work. When Victoria's done talking to Lamplighter, she meets with Mallory and the rest of the team, saying that between Lamplighter's testimony and the recent murder in the grocery store, she can build a solid case against Vought. She still needs another witness though, because relying on Lamplighter alone won't hold up in court. Mallory promises to find someone. Victoria leaves. Frenchie and Kimiko follow Victoria for protection, worried Vought might try to kill her. Mallory decides to take MM to find another witness. Butcher tells Huey to keep an eye on Lamplighter while he's out on an errand. Everyone splits up. MM and Mallory track down Dr. Jonah, the lead scientist at Vought, and the same man who raised Homelander as a child. Mallory pleads with him to testify against Vought, but he refuses, afraid for his family. Angry and out of options, they leave. Butcher, meanwhile, meets with his mother, who surprises him by bringing his father along. Butcher has always hated his dad, blaming him for his little brother Lenny's death. His father insists he did his best, but Butcher won't hear it. He storms off, saying he never wants to see him again. MM calls Butcher to say Jonah won't help. Butcher decides to handle it personally. He goes to Jonah and tells him flat out, "You either testify or I'll murder you and your entire family." Terrified, Jonah folds and agrees to show up in court. Butcher leaves, pleased. Meanwhile, Homelander and Stormfront drop in on Becca and Ryan, acting like one big family. It's obvious Homelander wants Ryan to bond with Stormfront as a mother figure, setting the stage for him to move in with them. Becca's furious, arguing that Ryan needs to stay with her, otherwise he'll grow up in misery just like Homelander did. Homelander pretends to see her point and says okay, but that same night, Becca goes to collect Ryan after Homelander's visit, only to have Ryan refuse to leave with her. It turns out Homelander told him the entire place is just a fake Vought-controlled bubble and that his mom's been hiding him from the real world. Becca cries, insisting she only did it for his safety, but Ryan sides with Homelander and Stormfront, leaving with them. Becca is devastated. Elsewhere, Starlight goes to see her mom, hoping to make peace. But suddenly, Black Noir appears, knocks them both out, and captures them. A while later, we see Starlight locked in a special cell that dampens her powers so she can't fight back. Around the same time, Huey and Lamplighter are hanging out at a safe house, seeing on the news that Starlight's been detained because Vought suspects she's a traitor. Huey freaks, begging Lamplighter to help him rescue her. Lamplighter, depressed over everything he's done, feels useless and claims he can't save anyone. But Huey rallies him, and they sneak into Vought Tower together to free Starlight. As soon as they get inside, though, Lamplighter's true motive comes out. He wants to find his statue in the building, only to discover it's been removed. Crestfallen, he mumbles he wanted to die in front of it, but now he can't even have that. He suddenly sets himself on fire, burning himself alive as a final act of despair. Huey is shocked, but can't do anything. He runs off to look for Starlight. On his way, Huey finds Starlight's mother and frees her, then keeps searching. Starlight, meanwhile, realizes Lamplighter's fire has triggered the alarm, which gives her a power source. She absorbs the alarm's energy, blasting open her cell door and escaping. But she's promptly confronted by Black Noir, who nearly kills her. Maeve shows up at the last second, beating Noir off Starlight so she can get away. Starlight thanks Maeve and flees. She eventually meets up with Huey, relieved he came for her. That night passes. The next day, Huey, Starlight, Butcher, and the entire team gather around a TV to watch Victoria Newman's big hearing against Vought. Homelander, Maeve, and plenty of others are also in attendance. Finally, Jonah arrives about to testify. Then something totally insane happens. Out of nowhere, boom, a judge's head explodes. Then Jonah's head. Then multiple people in the courtroom. Chaos erupts, and nobody, not even Homelander, understands what's going on. In the panic, Mallory grabs Victoria and they flee. Butcher and his crew are convinced someone from Vought is behind these exploding heads. They decide the only solution is to gather the weapons they've stockpiled and assassinate as many Supes as possible. That's it. No more playing around. Just then, Starlight appears, saying she has another plan. She asks them to hold off and do nothing for the moment, and they agree. So Starlight and Huey go see Maeve, begging her to testify against Vought in court. But Maeve, terrified, refuses. And why can't Starlight testify herself? Because Vought fired her, so she's technically a fugitive. Her testimony wouldn't hold much weight. Disheartened, Starlight and Huey leave. Meanwhile, Edgar meets Alistair, the leader of the church that's been helping the Deep and now A-Train. Edgar strikes a deal to reinstate the Deep, but refuses to bring A-Train back because A-Train is black, and Stormfront is a hardcore racist from her Nazi upbringing. She won't accept him. Alistair understands and agrees to only push the Deep's return. But after Edgar leaves, A-Train emerges from the shadows. He's overheard the whole thing. Furious, he comes up with his own plan, stealing Stormfront's personal file from Alistair's office. She apparently spent time in that church's program, so they have a file on her. A-Train then meets Starlight and Huey, handing it over so they can bring Stormfront down, thus paving the way for A-Train to rejoin the Seven. They take it and leave. Around this time, Becca manages to escape from her Vought compound and finds Butcher, tearfully telling him Homelander took Ryan. Butcher is devastated to see her like this and decides to help. He asks her to stay with his team while he goes to meet Edgar. In that meeting, Butcher basically lays it out. He knows Edgar needs Ryan in order to have the only being who could potentially stand up to Homelander someday. But if Ryan stays with Homelander, that plan falls apart. Butcher offers to help kidnap Ryan and deliver him to Edgar's people to raise him far from Homelander. In return, Butcher expects to be reunited with Becca, with everyone happy, at least in theory. Edgar likes the idea and agrees. Meanwhile, Homelander and Stormfront try training Ryan to use his powers, but he's not making progress. Then Stormfront gets an urgent alert on her phone. Her real identity, her Nazi background, it's all out in the open. She's furious and leaves to go handle the crisis. No sooner is she gone than Butcher and the gang arrive, blasting a loud sonic device outside, which draws Homelander out. While he's distracted, Butcher, Becca, and the team snatch Ryan and race off. But at the last moment, Butcher can't bear to hand Ryan over to Edgar's goons. He can't destroy Becca's heart like that. He confesses everything to Becca, who's upset but forgives him. He tells MM to take Becca and Ryan and drive them someplace safe, possibly to Mallory. MM agrees, but they don't get far before Stormfront shows up, hurling their car aside. They manage to scramble out unharmed. Stormfront then battles Starlight, assuming she's the one who leaked her Nazi secrets. Kimiko joins in, eager for revenge for her brother's murder. Stormfront is incredibly powerful, nearly defeating them both, until Maeve suddenly appears to help. United, they take Stormfront down a notch. She flees, badly injured. Meanwhile, Stormfront catches up to Becca, Butcher and Ryan, throwing Butcher aside and strangling Becca. Just before she kills her, Ryan unleashes his powers. He loses control, incinerating Stormfront. Tragically, he also mortally wounds Becca. Butcher rushes to Becca's side. With her dying breath, she begs him to protect Ryan and make sure he knows it wasn't his fault. Then she passes away. Homelander arrives in a fury, ready to kill Butcher and Ryan in his grief. But Maeve shows up again, threatening to release the Flight 37 video if he lays a hand on them. Furious but powerless, Homelander backs down. Butcher takes Ryan to Mallory, so he'll be safe under her protection. Mallory tells Butcher that with Stormfront exposed as a Nazi, Congress has halted production of Compound V and appointed Victoria Newman to oversee the soups. She asks Butcher to keep working with her. He says he'll think about it. Edgar, in a press conference, announces a temporary halt to Compound V's production, also clearing Starlight's name and blaming Stormfront for everything. Starlight is reinstated to the Seven against everyone's wishes, but they have no choice. At the same time, Alistair is talking to both A-Train and the Deep. He informs A-Train that he's back in the Seven, but the Deep, unfortunately, is not. A-Train is thrilled and takes off. The Deep is furious, yells at Alistair, and leaves. Moments later, Alistair gets a phone call from Victoria Newman. He tells her he's the one who leaked Stormfront's file. He also mentions having more files that could ruin other heroes if she helps him out. Clearly, he's blackmailing her. She pretends to agree, and then his head explodes. Standing outside his window is Victoria, revealing she's also a super with the power to blow people's heads up. Suddenly, we realize she's the one behind all those lethal explosions, using them to gain control over the soups. The final scene, Victoria heads into her new office and finds Huey there, asking for a job. She agrees to hire him. That sets the stage for more chaos in the next season. And that's it, folks. Bye for now.